Miss Mabel Franklin was a teacher at the Ely Public Schools. She was actually working as the librarian there at the school, and she approached the city about having a library for the public. And she volunteered her own time to get it started. And the official vote to start a new library in the city of Ely was October 7th, 1922. For the first few months, Mabel worked in a classroom in the evenings out of the school, and within a few months it became apparent that they needed to actually hire someone, that she wasn't going to just volunteer forever. And so in 1923, in February, Mrs. Ruth King started working at the library. The library had a main room with a smaller part that could be closed off with a sliding wall. If anyone has seen the picture of Ruth King reading to the Brownie troop in the smaller children's section, you can see that there was a fireplace there that was actually a working fireplace, and they could close a wall off to have that be its own separate room, much as in the new building we can close a wall off for our meeting area. There are some hints in the board minutes that maybe she was not happy with what was going on with her job, but she resigned and she moved to California. She was immediately succeeded by Mildred Bergnine. Mildred came in with a lot of ideas, judging from the written records that are left. She was asking for new furniture, she was asking for new shelving, she was asking for more help. And she was hired in the middle of March of 1949, and in July she turned in her resignation. I kind of think that she might have had a different idea of what the job was going to be than what it actually ended up being. The second Ruth that worked at the library, Ruth Namger-Kirkus did not work at the library previously. The first couple of years that she was there, the library paid for her to go and take some library courses to learn what she was doing. She's probably one of those librarians that you picture going shh as you came in the building. At her very first meeting with the library board after she was hired in 1949, she suggested the following rules. Number 1, no books taken out without cards. Number 2, when checking out, no renewals by telephone if books were overdue. No books if there are fines or overdues on someone's cards. The fines were 1 cent per day, and if books were on a waiting list, it was 5 cents per day. So if somebody was waiting for your book, you better bring it back in because it was going to cost you 5 times as much. No duplication of library cards. If library cards were lost, it cost 5 cents to get a new one. No loitering at the desk at the library. And you must remove your hat while you are in the library. So those were the rules. They did say in there that the rules and regulations were not yet complete and more might be added to them, but that was what she brought to the very first meeting that she went to. She was involved in the Ely Public Library for a very long time. She worked as head librarian until 1966, and when she resigned and retired in 1966, within a month she was on the library board. So she stayed active even after she was no longer working. Lucille had been working at the library since 1956. She started as a library assistant, so she did have some experience in the library. She, from what I have heard, was very well liked. Unfortunately, she grew ill and passed away suddenly while she was still hired, although she had not been to work for a few months at that point. And she was succeeded by Pauline Krall, who had been working as the assistant. In 1979, the first serious purchase offer was made on the painting Breakfast in the Garden by Frederick Frazicki. At that point, the board was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We are not going to sell that painting. So it's interesting that, you know, about 10 years later, the city had changed its mind.
The Donald G. Gardner Humanities Trust was established by the city in 1989. It was created from a painting that was gifted to the city. There was a businessman from Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, Donald G. Gardner. He was very philanthropic. So Donald Gardner had a summer cabin on Ojibwe Lake, then called Twin Lakes, and he was up there 3 or 4 years and eventually donated this painting to the city of Ely. It eventually sold to the Jordan Volpe Gallery in New York for $510,000. And it was a vote of 4-3 in the city council whether to create this arts trust from an art gift versus putting it into the street repair or maintenance. The original endowment is preserved, and so having spent just interest earned, the trust to this date in July of 2022 has given out over $840,000 back to the Ely community. So the library was the keeper, I guess, of the legacy, the painting, Breakfast in the Garden. And so when the trust was created, it was to benefit both the Ely Public Library and the arts in the community. So the library has always received money from the trust. They have enlarged their collections. When they were in the old community center, they built extra shelving to store the collections. They've had computers or copiers, things that would maybe be expenses above what maybe was normally in their budget or what the city could afford.
It's a great thing if there's we have a project and there's not another grant source out there that we can easily identify to see if Gardner is willing to go for something like that. It's a big advantage for us over some of the other libraries in the area to have that sort of a good relationship with a funding source. I was the successor to Arlene in terms of the head librarian position. Later on, while I've been working here, my title has actually changed to library director rather than head librarian.
I'm a huge Rachel Heinrich fan, professionally and personally. I'm just so impressed by her commitment, her vision, her passion, her organization. Her mind is like a big encyclopedia.
The things that Rachel does are so innovative and so cool, and she doesn't have to do them. She chooses to do them. She's an amazing person, and she has an amazing staff as well. It's not just her, it's her staff too.
Rachel is not only a good librarian, but she's also just a really good person and personable and really good to work with.
So So in 2009, Library Journal, which is the publication of the American Library Association, decided to do a rating system for libraries. And in the very first year, 2009, the Ely Library received 3 stars, which is pretty exciting. So the stars are based on usage numbers. They come from the numbers that we turn in to our state reports. So every year the state, all of the states, ask the individual public libraries for information about how many people have come into their building that year, how many reference questions have been asked, how many things have been checked out. So they take all those numbers and they make a score, and they divide the number of points you have by the number of population you have to give you a score. So basically, the more points you get, the more people are using your library. We have continued to get stars. We haven't gotten stars every year, but in the 14 years of the rating system, Ely's received 3 stars 5 times, including that first time, 4 stars 3 times, and 5 stars for the last 2 years.
The reason that we get 5 stars is Rachel Heinrich. I mean, that's just it. Her curation of the collection is beyond the beyond. She's totally on top of what's new, what's important, what's relevant.
During this time, there was more discussion about the library moving into a different area, moving into a different building, about renovating the community center. That discussion never really went entirely away. It kept coming back up in time. And the idea at that point was to move all of the city services into one building, so having City Hall and the library and the police station and the fire station all in one big complex, which is something that you see in other smaller towns. There was a lot of talk, there were some preliminary drawings, and things didn't go any further than that. The community center, at the point that I started working, had not had a lot of major renovation. And it had not, it was getting to the point where it needed like a major overhaul of the electrical system and the plumbing system and things like that. It also had the problem that it was not handicapped accessible.
So the accessibility factor was, I think, really important to Rachel. It was really important to the board. It was really important to Ross Peterson.
And we had a new mayor at the time too. Mayor Peterson, Ross Peterson was on board too. And he saw it and understood it. And he's like, yes, we need this. The city needs this.
I was determined when I came in to get our city buildings accessible for everyone. So we had some meetings. The first meeting, we had somebody from St. Louis County come in and talk about Americans with Disabilities Act, how if we did a major remodeling in this building or which would be the City Hall or in the community center, we were supposed to make that building ADA accessible. And I think we'd maybe dodged that law in the past a few times. People came up with different plans from $3 to $8 million. So we started looking at other alternatives, and that's when we decided to build the new library. And it's unfortunate to get out of the community center. It's a great old building, but between the cost of running it and the fact that it just wasn't set up to really have a real modern library, we decided to get out of it.
The breaking point for me when we decided it was time to move on was there was one leak. The rain came, and it's like the ceiling started falling in the second floor. And it's like a tile came down, there was like a near-miss situation, and it was just like, it's time.
It was, of course, a divided opinion in town on how that should be handled. At the same time, the State Library Services Office, which is a legislative division in the state hierarchy, so one of the government offices there, they offered accessibility grants to help libraries improve the accessibility to their buildings. There was a vote taken by the council in July of 2013 that made the decision to put the library here where we are located now, and for me to pursue that grant opportunity. I remember that in January of 2014, I was talking to the Tuesday group in town, and I had pictures of, some of the very first renderings that we had from the architectural firm, and I found out literally 10 minutes before I left to go to the Tuesday group that we had gotten the grant from the State Library Services. And that was incredible to find that out. It was even more incredible later when I found out that they had given us almost all the money that they had for that year to our project.
We had a number of city councilors that really helped push this thing through. Heidi was great. She could see the value of the project being done this way and really was a big backer. And Gordon Shetty, it seemed like whenever this project stalled and it seemed like we'd hit a little bit of a roadblock, all I had to do was look at Gordon, and he would say something like, look, this is discriminating against people with disabilities. So he would say, we don't have an option, we got to get this done.
I was trying to figure out why I was fuzzy on some of it, and during part of that, I believe, and this is why I'm so fuzzy, is that Gordon and I were both going through cancer treatment. So some of it I don't remember because I wasn't present at all of the meetings. And Rachel every now and again would be like, do you need to pick me up? And she would take me through, and I have a surprise for you, and she'd take me through. And I just really remember being excited about a lot of it.
We knew we wanted certain aspects in our new space, and we wanted to blend with the natural environment. We wanted rocks, we wanted wood, we wanted a color palette that embraced our environment. I love the interior space and how it flows from the exterior to the interior. Like I said, that rock wall in the sitting area, the meeting area that is, connected to the rock wall on the exterior. All of that was very well thought out, and the Meyer Group was so great to work with.
I can't say enough good things about working with that crew. The move process was interesting. On Monday, the first day, we had people in here putting shelving together. On Tuesday, we started moving books and shelving up the street. By Friday, we had all the books up here. The very last things that got moved, I moved by myself on Saturday, and the very last thing that went from the old building to the new building was Amelia the Turtle and all of her accessory items. She was very glad to see me on Saturday. She was quite, I'm sure, stunned at the fact that everything had disappeared out of where she was.
But it all got done in time. So that was amazing, but it was exhausting, exhilarating, and something that was so exciting to be a part of. I just remember one night, this is before the building was open, we just sat in those cushy chairs and I remember just looking at her going, I cannot believe that we made it. And it was just, I think I started crying because I was just so happy. And it was just one of those moments that, it felt so good.
Wednesday was the first day that we were open to the public. The first person through the doorway was a 99-year-old woman who had been a patron of the library, who had not been able to come in for several years because the stairs were too much for her, and she had been in quite a bit before physically she could no longer come in anymore. It was great to see that first person was somebody that had been affected by the ADA, by the accessibility.
I mean, it gives me shiny eyes still today to think about that like she hadn't been to the library in ages, and she was the very first person through the door because she could get through the doors.
We opened on the 12th of November to the public, but we actually had our grand opening a month later on December 10th.
Yeah, the ribbon cutting. That was super fun. And I remember it because it was December 10th. It was my birthday. And it was like one of the best birthday presents I've ever had.
The grand opening seems surreal.
And we did have some speeches and a large ribbon cutting. And then all day long we had kind of like a giant community party, is kind of how I like to think of it. We did have a flash mob, which is out there in the world somewhere with me dancing on it. I'm sorry, everyone who sees it. I'm so sorry.
So Elizabeth and I were part of the flash mob, which we were really excited about. It was so hard to keep it a secret. No, we're never doing another one ever again, neither one of us, ever. Rachel gave some of us commemorative books, and I was looking through it before I came here today, and I looked through it, and there's so many people that were key to getting that library from inception to completion that are no longer with us. And I'm so grateful for those people.
There were a lot of people who said, this is not going to be as good as the CC or whatever. Now, there are a lot of people who will tell me, that's a fantastic library. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad everybody can go to it now.
So COVID was an interesting challenge for the library in 2020. When you go to library school, they cover a lot of things in terms of disasters. They cover things like what to do if your ceiling falls in and everything gets flooded. They cover what happens if you have a fire in your library. They do not, however, cover what happens during a pandemic. So there was really no roadmap for anybody out there as far as libraries were concerned. So we came up with a plan to do curbside, and I shared that plan with the regional library system, and I know a lot of the libraries copied us, where we would put bags out. We borrowed a couple of the street barricades from Public Works, and I got some bungee cords, and we just hung bags with names on them on the bungee cords. It meant that all of our interactions with patrons became either on the telephone or via email or some other messaging system online. And it was very challenging.
Again, hats off to Rachel and the library staff. They pivoted in a way that I just exceeds expectations, even exceeds words.
I thought they did a good job, but the fact that they were able to figure out how to get books out to as many patrons as I possibly could in a timely manner, and then help people curbside. But I really appreciated how much they did online that they didn't have to do.
We tried to do some programming online, particularly on Facebook. Jesse and Trisha did a great job of stepping up and doing story times on Facebook, and they came up with silly costumes and, did them together and played off each other and things like that. So when we were able to open up, I think there was a lot of confusion about whether we really were open or not. As the staff, it was interesting for us too. We had kind of gotten used to not having people in here, and all of a sudden there were people again. While we were doing curbside, we had rearranged a lot of things inside the library to facilitate getting those bags out. So all of that had to be rearranged back to the way it was before.
I think that when it finally reopened, I give so much credit to Rachel and the staff. They were so careful about sanitizing and having breaks in between so that all the surfaces could be cleaned, and, the plexiglass, and protecting the workers as well as the patrons.
I think it's too early to say long-term what that effect is going to be, because we're still towards the end of it, I think.
When I was on the League of Minnesota Cities, I would always say, well, our library just did this. And it's now when I go places, people are like, so what's your library doing now?
So I think that the library in Ely offers a lot of things to the people that are hard to find in other places. I know one of the council members likes to call it the community gathering place. It's the place where if your car is being fixed, you have somewhere to go for a couple of hours.
I think there would be so much missing if you don't have a public library. Just the idea that where do people go to share ideas or learn new ideas?
It's such a big thing for children. And I've got grandkids now, and my granddaughters just love the library. They're taking books out, they're reading books like you can't believe.
I just can't overstate the importance of a public library, regardless of race, gender, identity, income, education. You can go into a public library and access information and make yourself more informed citizen, and that is huge.